it's only very recently that there's been acceptance of homosexuals in the church, and it's only this year, just gone, that we've actually had the first female bishop, and that was here in Gloucester. So we've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go before we've accepted everybody truly.
I think that if we were put in very different circumstances, even like 50, 100 years ago, our ideas and our minds were very different. If you look at women and the way in which they interacted with society, if you looked at people with bisexual or homosexual, attitudes, they change over time. So we have to accept that.
I just really think that the debates about homosexuals and about women in the church, they are irrelevant, not because there's anything I object to, but because I think they should have been done and dusted 50 years ago. I mean, it should be the norm that you have female priests and bishops, because what's the difference? I mean, there's been no real backlash against Bishop Rachel. It's just everyone's just accepted it and just think, well, that's just normal. So the church is having these irrelevant debates in my eyes about, and tearing themselves apart about it, when the real problems that they're facing are dwindling congregations and what I see as a lack of ability to help people in need and combat.
I still think there is this thing about excluding certain types of people. I have a friend who is gay, openly gay, does an awful lot within the church, was a church organist, but was not supported at all when the church found out that he was gay, to the point where he was excluded communion, and so he ultimately left the job.
Me thinking, actually, there's bits of Christianity here that I'm not sure about. There are bits here, particularly about things like the treatment of women, things about the nature of what makes a good life, and original sin for me really became a massive problem, because it was very early on thinking, you know what, I don't feel like at my base that I'm broken, was then actually also at the same kind of process, same time and same process, kind of beginning to realise that I was gay. And actually I went through a really tough period coming from a fairly strict traditional Catholic family. I knew that if I came out to my father, my dad was going to go, no, you can't be, it's a mortal sin, you'll go to hell, etc., etc. It was a difficult thing. And I spent a lot of spiritual angst, I guess, actually trying to think, well, but how can I be gay? God made me, how can I be sinful? How can I be this awful, terrible thing? Please, God, don't make me gay because I'm going to go to hell.
You're right about the way in which society moulds around, or religion sometimes moulds around society. A lot of people, they think that Islam actually itself isn't very feminist, but when you look at it, it's very feminist. And the vote was given to women 1400 years ago. People think, 4 wives, that's like really against women, blah, blah, blah. But actually, is it more important? And at the time of our Prophet, people used to have like 12 wives, 13 wives, and they used to treat women like rubbish, basically. But when a man is to have 4 wives, he has to treat them all in a very, very, very special way. He has to take care of them. He's responsible for taking care of all their maintenance, all their sustenance, providing for their children, providing for them. That's it. There are particular boundaries around it, and the media very much so. And also, not just the media, actually a patriarchal way of thinking still puts women down, So whilst the religion might say something, it doesn't necessarily mean that society is going to adhere to it, and that the power dynamics that exist will always still come into play.
So when God talks about the role of male and females, he always describes mankind as being men and women of equal levels. So for example, he instructs Muslim men and women to do good. He'll instruct Muslim men and women to avoid sin. So he never differentiates between a man and woman in terms of how they're different. So in Islam, they're actually equal. But again, because of the misconceptions that come through our media, the general perception is that Muslim women are told to stay at home, to stay in the kitchen, to look after the family members, to look after the children, to cook for their husbands. But this is the complete opposite of reality. I'm married myself, and my wife, she's also a teacher at the high school for girls on Denmark Road.
So as a Muslim woman, my right is that my husband takes care of me. My right is that my children are taken care of. My right is that he has responsibility to put the food on my table, that provide my clothes, to understand that when I go through the experience of bearing a child, that it's not my burden to worry about this type of stuff. And that's a particular responsibility that he needs to take upon himself. Now, when you talk about equality and equal rights and things like that, people are like, oh, everything that I earn as a woman is rightly mine. I don't have to share it if I don't want to. But that's not necessarily the way in which society will work. Even from an Islamic perspective, you know, a lot of people, in this day and age, you need to if you want to buy a house, they're like stupidly expensive. You have to kind of balance it in some way. Even though it's my right to be sat at home and taking care of the children and teaching them, that's my main role, is to teach them. It's not to sit at home and cook and clean. It's to make sure that my children grow up as being good human beings.
Gender imbalance in any religion, I call it, this is a completely separate entity, which I call it pro-religion, which is politics and religion mixed, or man-made things. Some of the things would have happened because women, because of their anatomy, physiology and all, there is a little bit weaker, so it was easier to establish a dominance of a man.
I wouldn't blame politics, I would blame culture. Because of all the different cultures that exist in the world, people from certain backgrounds and certain cultures generally behave differently. And according to their culture, Muslim women or Asian women are sometimes seen as second-class citizens. However, in Britain, the vast majority of people are very tolerant and people are seen as equal. But if you were to look at inequality from a cultural point of view, and even within the political spectrum, we would find that men are generally given more preference over women. Or we want to look at the top people within financial institutions. We'll find that more males are being employed than females. So sometimes culture determines how society treats women.